The night everything broke open, I was standing in a borrowed dress at my little sister's wedding, holding a glass of water I hadn't touched, watching a room full of people celebrate a family I had never quite belonged to. My name is Sarah. I'm 32 years old. I work in civil construction, project management, site coordination, the kind of work that gets buildings standing and keeps them that way. I didn't inherit that career. I fought for it, certification by certification, rejection by rejection, until I had enough experience and enough stubborn momentum that no one could question my seat at the table anymore. 7 years ago, my grandmother passed away. She was the only person in my family who treated my ambitions like something real. She left me a small piece of land on the edge of the city. Uneven, overgrown, completely unremarkable to anyone who looked at it. My parents called it a burden. My sister asked if we could sell it and split the money. I said no, and I started building. I didn't hire it out. I learned what I didn't know. I worked weekends, holidays, early mornings before my regular job started. I made mistakes and fixed them myself. When money got tight, I stretched it. When I got hurt, I rested one day and went back the next. 3 years later, I had a home. Not a showpiece. A real, solid, livable home. Every wall plumb, every joint sealed, every corner mine in a way that no one could ever argue with. My family never visited once during construction. So when my sister Hannah announced her wedding, I told myself it was a new chapter. I dressed up, I showed up, I sat at my assigned table near the back, and I watched my parents orbit around her like she was the sun, and the rest of us were just weather. I was fine with that. I had made my peace with being invisible in that family a long time ago. What I was not prepared for was what happened between the appetizers and the first dance. My father appeared beside my chair. He didn't sit. He stood the way he always did when he had already decided the outcome of a conversation. My mother materialized seconds later, her smile practiced and warm in the way that always meant something was about to be asked of me. "We need to talk about the house," my father said. I set down my glass. They had clearly rehearsed this. The logic was clean, almost reasonable sounding if you didn't know what was underneath it. Hannah was starting a new life. She needed stability. I was single, I was practical, I could figure something out. All I had to do was transfer the property. Just on paper, they kept saying like that phrase made it smaller, and the family would finally have something solid to stand on. I sat very still, and I asked one question. What happens to me? They exchanged a look. The kind that confirmed I had already been categorized as flexible. "You're resourceful," my mother said. "You've always figured things out," my father added. And there it was. 7 years of my life, reduced to a line item they had already spent. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I looked at both of them and I said, clearly, without hesitation, "No, I'm not doing that." The temperature in that corner of the room dropped immediately. My father's face changed. My mother leaned in, her voice dropping to that tight, urgent register she used when she needed things contained. Words came fast after that, selfish, difficult, ungrateful. "Think about your sister. Think about this family. Think about what you owe us." I stood up. I told them I was not transferring my home, not today, not ever, and that I was done with this conversation. I picked up my bag. I turned to leave. I heard him move before I could process what was happening. Fast, purposeful. I turned just enough to see his face, something raw and unrecognizable breaking through, and then the brass centerpiece from the table was in his hand, and then everything went white. I woke up on the marble floor with my ears ringing, and the taste of blood in my mouth. What came after, the hospital, the statement I gave to police, the investigation, the courtroom, I'll tell you about all of it. But what I want you to understand right now, before any of that, is this. I did not cause what happened that night by saying no. I caused nothing by protecting what was mine. The moment my father's hand closed around that centerpiece, he made a choice. Not me. I had simply, finally, after 32 years, refused to make myself smaller so that someone else could feel larger. The house is still mine. I sit on the back steps some evenings and watch the light move across the walls, and I think about my grandmother who told me once, if you're going to build something, make sure it can hold weight. She wasn't only talking about construction. She was talking about this, about a life built so carefully, so deliberately, that when the people who should have protected you finally show their hand, there is nothing left for them to take. Sync to vid.